Well, thank you so much, Luis, for taking the time to talk with us today. Um, I'd love it if you could just start by introducing yourself. You are, of course, the TESOL 2024 Teacher of the Year, but a little bit about, what you do professionally.
Hi, Wayne. Thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity to be here with you today. So, a little bit about myself. I am currently living in Poland and I am teaching English and Spanish at my university. And before that, I was living and working in the US and I taught English and Spanish, all grade levels, K through 12, higher education, and adult education as well.
Wow, that's great. Um, and I'm curious to know a little bit more about, your path to the profession and, how you got into it.
Yes, it was a little bit of a serendipitous journey. I was in the military. I arrived in the US when I was 17, and I was learning English, of course. I graduated high school. Then I joined the military for 4 years. But after the military, I became what they call a civilian. So I was working at a civilian position, which was in the military base, but I
Mhm.
realized that that was not my calling. So I started volunteering at a community organizations or community opportunities that were out there in the community where I could just explore and be able to volunteer in different capacities. And one day I was volunteering for the Alexandria. They have an organization, Alexandria County
Mm.
City, and they asked me if I could teach a class to adult immigrants. And I said, well, I have never taught a class, but I learned English, so I guess let's try it. And I remember the moment I walked into the classroom, I was a little bit nervous because I had never done anything like that, but I just wanted to be there, help, and do the best I could. But everybody welcomed me with like, big smiles, and they were
That's
really
great.
anxious to get started because they really wanted to know information and to ask questions, and they wanted knowledge. And I was so happy to see that. And then we started the entire class. We devoted the whole class to learning how to order McDonald's. That was the
Oh.
question. Like, how do we order McDonald's? I'm like, okay, number one, number two, with Coke, with this, that was the whole class. But they were so happy. And after that night, because it was an evening class, and after that night, I said to myself, you know what? I think this is what I'm meant to do for the rest of my life. And it was an experience. This really speaks to the power of volunteering, really. But it was
Mhm.
an experience that completely changed the trajectory of my life, having that opportunity to learn and to teach with adult learners.
That's a great story. And yeah, now that you've been teaching for a while to be able to reflect on that, sometimes we don't even know at the moment, how impactful something's going to be. And then it's pretty amazing when you think back on it. Now I know you're known a lot, of course, for social emotional learning, but then you do so many different things. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now? I believe you have a class on speaking.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I am teaching two speaking classes, which are, the same course, but for two different groups this semester at my university here in Poland. And of course, everything I do, social emotional learning is my philosophy, my pedagogy, my practice. Everything I do is through social emotional learning. And we've been talking about different topics because speaking, I usually approach
Hmm.
speaking from the perspective of communication. And that's how I see it through social emotional learning. So we've been talking about different things when it comes to speaking. I mean, we've been talking about body language. More recently, we've been talking about silence. And I was talking to my
Oh,
colleagues, it's
interesting.
like,
Yeah.
you're talking about silence in speaking class? Kind of an oxymoron, but we talked
Yeah.
about silence and we've been talking about it in our speaking course because I've been talking to my students about how silence is a cultural and linguistic practice. And I've been
Hmm.
telling them this idea of how, for example, when we think about speaking is breathing in, listening, breathing out, this idea, but silence is the bridge that connects both. And we haven't talked too much about silence in language education, but silence is
Hmm.
essential when we think about communication, because in some cultures silence is golden, in other cultures
Hmm.
silence is perceived as awkward. So when we talk about speaking, we talk about communication in general, miscommunication, effective communication. How do we understand silence, our relationship with silence in speaking? So, these are some of the things that we explore in our classes because, again, everything I do, my entire teaching philosophy, pedagogy is based on social emotional learning. So we explore very interesting topics and we talk about them.
Yeah, I love that. And, I haven't heard that topic brought up a lot recently, but, with having you talk about that now, I can see like how important that is, in communication, like leaving the right amount of space to allow others to speak, or yeah, just what silence can communicate to others. Yeah, and you definitely need it, just like you need white space on a page, I think sometimes, with design or something like that. Thinking about marketing and communications on my side, but yeah, I
Absolutely.
love
And
that
and it's
topic.
also like active listening, for example, comes from
Mhm,
silence. So all of these other skills like silence, we don't talk too much about it in education, in teacher education, in language education, but it's fundamental to communication. And we've been talking
mhm.
about, for example, when I brought up the topic, I remember the first day that we talked about it, and I had this urge now to say picture it because I like Golden Girls. I don't know if you know Golden Girls, but picture it. We were in the first day of class talking about silence, and then I asked, "What do you think about silence?" And then the entire class was silent. And I said, "How do we feel about this?" And then everybody started laughing, because they're communicating something, right? Or they're thinking,
Yep,
or they don't know what to say, or some of them were comfortable, some of them were uncomfortable. So we talk about all of these things, but not only silence, but in general, right? Like different topics.
yeah,
And it's just fantastic.
yeah, really kind of fascinating, actually. Um, and so I just wanted to segue for a bit, kind of thinking back to, the fact that you've just become like our teacher of the year. What are your views on excellence in teaching?
Excellence. Thank you so much for that question. Excellence,
Sure.
more than anything, I think the connection, the human connection in language is what makes teaching and learning excellent. So when I think of excellence in teaching, I think of the human
Hmm.
connection, specifically connection between the connection between the teacher and the student. My perspective, and again, I'm going to go back to social emotional learning. It's about humanizing education. So when we think about excellence in teaching, what do you do to connect and to help your student at the human level, right? Sometimes we
Hmm.
forget that students are human beings, that they're dealing with issues with life outside of language teaching and learning. So it's not that we have to go into their personal life. It's just to acknowledge the fact that they're human beings, and some days they're going to be 100%. Some days they're going to be at
Hmm.
50%, and we just have to meet them that way. Wherever they are, that's where we're meeting them as teachers. And for me, that's excellence in teaching, knowing that our students are human beings and we're able, capable, and ready to meet them wherever they are as human beings first, and then as students.
No, no, that's an excellent point too. I mean, the fact that, we're complex, beings, and things don't exist in these vacuums. It's like, we are all of these things that we take with us wherever we go, so, I
We
think
never
that's
leave
really important.
anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We never leave everything outside of the door. Like we bring everything with us into the classroom. Oh, teachers too, teachers, students, we always
Hmm.
bring everything we have into the classroom with us. 100%. I agree.
And kind of keeping that in the background and being able to adjust expectations based on kind of how you sense people are doing one day or another. So, yeah. Switching gears a little bit more to another topic, there's been a lot of talk in general and a focus, for the association as well on DEIA. And I wanted to ask you how you bring DEI type, principles into your classroom.
Yes. Thank you. The EIA is a very important topic, especially in our field. And it's interesting to think about how the EIA can be used or incorporated into different
Hmm.
classrooms. From my perspective, in the US, the way that I was approaching the EIA was very different because the EIA is contextual. So here where I am in
True.
Poland, we focus a lot on inclusion. I focus a lot on inclusion in our
Hmm.
classroom, and we talk about different topics when it comes to diversity in many many ways. You know, we talk about ableism. We talk about gender. My students let me know right away, and they feel comfortable. I'm so happy that they feel comfortable coming to me and letting me know these
Yeah.
are my pronouns. This is what I prefer you call me, and this and that. You know, so we talk about all of these things in our classroom, and we want to make sure that. And when I say we, because it's my students and I, we want to make sure
Hmm.
that everybody feels welcome, that everybody feels safe. And I tell them so many stories all the time because I want them to know that they can come to me to talk about anything. I'm here to help them. You know, even if it's higher education, many times people might think, no, K through 12 usually you have more opportunities, regardless of where we're teaching at any level. We are capable and able to include the EIA into our teaching, and I do that with my students every time I'm talking to them online, offline. It doesn't matter. I remember recently we were talking about, and this is also it's interesting because there's so many topics that we can include into the EIA. But we were talking about in
Hmm.
our speaking class, we were talking about introverts and extroverts, and you
Yeah.
know, you see right away who is an extrovert in the class, especially speaking class, right? And then who are introverts,
Hmm.
and then we're talking about introverts and just kind of this idea of including everyone into the conversation, right? And then I was letting them know, look, I'm an introvert. And some of my students were looking at me and was like, what? And I'm like, yes, but I perform as an extrovert. And then we talked about performing as an extrovert and what does that mean. Also, I have some
Hmm.
students like me, we have speech. I have I stutter, so you know, speech has always been an issue for me. So we talk about also speech and like especially in speaking class, right? So strategies and how can we address those. So we never shy away from topics that you know, some people might say, well, this doesn't really kind of bring anything to the class. No, no, it's part of who we are. So we're going to talk about it. And especially if it comes into the
Hmm.
topic that we're discussing, which is speaking, which is, you know, always speaking communication. There's so many topics that you can interject in there. So we're always talking about different topics. But yes, definitely the EIA, it's at the core of my practice. And contextually, of course, I always have to know the context first, and then
Hmm.
practices change as you move through contexts.
Yes. And yeah, that's a very good point too about the fact that, any teacher or, someone who may be watching this, later on this interview, that yeah, it's different for everyone. And we do have members all around the world in different countries. And so it's just not going to be applied the same or look the same, anywhere really. And I guess a lot of it too is just dependent on the students you have too and how comfortable, like you said, they are with different things. But it sounds like they have a fantastic teacher, who makes them feel like safe, and they want to be open and share. So yeah,
Thank
I
you so much
love,
for that.
everything that you've talked with us about today. And just as a last little thing, do you have any particular advice you would give to teachers who are just entering the profession?
Yes, the best advice that I can give teachers, especially new teachers coming into the profession, is to find and build your community. It's the best advice I can give you. And when I
Hmm.
think about strength, success, um, good and bad things that happen throughout the
Yeah.
career, because you know things will happen like life, you know, it happens in our
Hmm.
career too. But every single challenge, success, you know, good, bad, everything that we go through as teachers, I can think about my own trajectory, and my community has always been there to support me. Your people, you know, some people call it community, tribe, group, friend, however you want to call it, but build it, you know, look for those people who
Hmm.
will help you move forward and continue pushing forward and continue growing as a professional, as a person, and build a strong community around them, because they will be the people who will celebrate with you, your success. And for me, it has been, I mean, I think of all my friends, I call them teacher friends. And I
Yeah.
do always say that teachers are the best people that I know. I really do truly believe so, because they have always been there for me. They have been my guiding force. They have been my mentors. They have been my teachers, you know, and I've grown so much as a person, as a professional, because of my community. So that's the best advice that I can give them.
That's excellent advice too. I think that, yeah, in any, profession you're in, it's great to have a community of people, of peers, like who understand the issues and challenges, and also, yeah, just might have help you problem solve something, and yeah, I think that is great advice. Well,
Absolutely. Thank
thanks
you.
again, yeah, for talking with us today, and I wish you the best with being Teacher of the Year.
Thank you so much, Gwen. A pleasure.